Hello, how are we all doing? How is everybody today? You can probably tell I'm a little bit excited about this one. We're finally back on the Necrons, guys. We're finally back on the Necrons. So I have a team tournament coming up very, very soon, and I'm taking a Monolith to it. So I'm just kind of slowly smashing out the Monolith paint job. So this is taken from a Twitch stream, actually. This was taken from the Twitch stream where I was painting it on stream. And yeah, you will have seen the portal. That's the portal of exile where the Necron warriors come out of when they're being teleported onto the battlefield from the Tomb World. I've actually got two of them. I've put a portal on the back as well, rather than the Wraith, which is supposed to have pointing into the orb at the top. But we're going to do lots of green glow on this. This is the Monolith where we get green glow to match the rest of my Necrons. It's the same recipe as all my other Necrons if you've seen any of them, but for those who haven't, it is Vallejo olive green or golden olive. Hang on, is it golden olive? Vallejo golden olive. Yellow green. Vallejo yellow green is like where you get the most punch. That's like the mid-tone, and you want quite a lot of that on the model to kind of sell the glow. And then there's ice yellow and then ivory for the highlights to really show where the kind of light source is emanating from. So we've got, you can see here, we've got the housing of the reactor. This is the nuclear reactor or the fusion reactor or whatever that is powering the Monolith. We've given it a coat of golden olive that was mixed in with a little bit of black, and it had a coat all over the orb with that, and then we put some little heart. I am chit-chattering away on my Twitch channel at the same time as this one, so you will see the occasional little emoji fly up. So we put golden olive into the centre, kind of glazed it in. You can see the brush strokes are kind of all going from the outside into the middle, so that when we're taking the brush off, that's where it's going to be putting the most amount of paint, deposits the most amount of paint at the end of its brush stroke. Now, one of the problems that you will see when you're doing these strokes that go into the middle is that sometimes you will have like a little spot that's left. Just once it's all dry, just dab a little spot right into the center. So it's when you're kind of moving all the paint into the middle, occasionally it will pull. You can see that little spot there that I've just filled in. So yeah, when you're dragging the paint into the middle, although it deposits the paint where you lift off the brush, occasionally you'll get like a little kind of empty spot appear. So just wait for all the layers to dry and then just fill that in. Now, the glow that we're going to put on this is obviously going to hit some of the reactor housing as well. So those bits that we've just put on there, that's some ivory, just so that when we glaze it over, those bits will get a little bit more bright than the rest of the kind of the metal housing. The metal housing as itself, that's just had a very, very quick coat of scale colour black metal, which was mixed with a little bit of black paint, just so that it has a little bit of a metallic fleck to it. And then we can build that up with either metallic highlights, or, as you'll see later, with some glowy highlights with the four paints that we're using for the glow. So what we're doing here is we're just putting lots of kind of lightning strikes into the center. We're building up the brightness in the center of the orb. You don't have to be, one of the things that I want to stress is you don't have to be neat about this at all. What we're going to do is we're going to glaze it back in a second. In fact, we're going to glaze it back now. So we get all those lightning strikes. You can just be as rough as you like, it really doesn't matter. You need to get some texture on there, and then once you glaze it back, once you put some glazes over it, you can either do it with an airbrush or you can do it with a paintbrush. It's not a problem. It's just a little bit quicker with an airbrush, but there are some benefits as well to doing it with a brush, because you can retain a little bit of the contrast. One of the challenges, if you like, of using an airbrush is that you get such a soft, smooth transition. Occasionally you actually want a quicker transition to sell the OSL, the object source lighting sort of feel of it. So if you do it with a brush, you can get a kind of a quicker transition. So this is a very, very thin mix, a very, very thin glaze of the golden olive, which is in the airbrush at the moment, and it's probably something like 4 parts Vallejo thinner to 1 part paint. And you can see how slowly I'm kind of building it up, and it looks very, very wet. And you kind of put a glaze on, you let it dry, or even you kind of start up in one side of the reactor housing. Put a very, very quick glaze layer on that, go to the other side, and then by the time you've kind of gone all the way around the reactor very, very slowly, then it should have dried once you got to the beginning again. Now, just to kind of push a little bit more punch, this is some ivory that it's a very, very wet ivory, so you can see as it dries it goes a little bit it goes a little bit less bright, because it's the translucency of it is softened down a little bit, but that's just some ivory in the center again, just to push the brightness of the middle. And then when we glaze over it with the golden olive, it will be just a little bit brighter than everywhere else on the model. It's just a little bit of underpainting. But what the idea is here is we've got the reactor is kind of, it's obviously going to hit the reactor housing, and it's going to have a little bit of a glow on that reactor housing, which is what all the little soft glows are on the outside. And as we put those layers in, you can see the ivory kind of disappears a little bit, but it still looks brighter than the rest, so it works quite well. Now this is yellow green, so we've got yellow green in the paintbrush now, and we're just pushing the brightness a little bit. So yellow green is very much the eerie green tone which I'm after, but you'll notice that there isn't that much difference, because we're putting it as a thin layer, as a thin glaze over the already there golden olive. So again, you still have to kind of build it up very, very slowly. But one of the things that you'll notice is that it's that soft transitions again, those slow transitions. You lose a little bit of contrast. So what we have to do is we have to go back in, and you'll need to do this a lot of the time when you're airbrushing. You need to go back in and reinforce the shadows a little bit. So what we've got, sad face for reinforcing the shadows. What we've got, please by the way come and hang out in Twitch chat sometime. Come and say hello and say you've come from YouTube. That would be awesome to see you. It's twitch.tv/Chris Frosson. But this is just some black ink, some I think it's Daler-Rowney black ink with a touch of thinner in it as well, just to thin it down. It's just to push a little bit of the shadow away. We can increase the glow a little bit more, so when you have an edge, like a sharp edge, you know, when you're doing the edge highlights and everything, so the sharp edge will catch the light a little bit, but you want the shadows around it so that you've got some contrast for the glow. And then a final little bit here, this is just some yellow green again, just pushing right into the center. Just to push that, we want a nice solid colour in the centre, so that we can put some brush marks on after that. And this is where we get the fun bit. Well, for me, this is the fun bit. The airbrushing is like it's cool enough, but it takes a long time. And this is the fun bit now, where we're starting to do some brush work. However, if you like it at this point, then just leave it at that. You'll notice that when we were airbrushing as well, we were trying to get the angles right, so that we weren't hitting too much in the shadows. If you look at the kind of little nodules that are coming out of the reactor, they've still got some shadows around them. That's will be where the light doesn't catch. And these are the edges that I was talking about earlier. These edges will be caught by the glow, so they will shine as well. Right. So this is the first coat of yellow green. Now, because the yellow green, the last coat of yellow green that we put through was through the airbrush, and we can reinforce that with the brush now, and because we're applying it with a brush, it's going to have more saturation and more coverage as well, so it'll be a little bit more punchy. And there's that little dot again that I was talking about. As you're dragging a glaze into the center, you'll always have like a little dot will just appear where it doesn't seem to have any paint on. So just kind of fill your paintbrush back up and just dot that glaze into the dot that appears. And this is a glaze, like I say, it's probably 2 parts water to 1 part paint, so we're pulling it across the transitions. We want to have a little bit of striation, a little bit of kind of texture in there to show that there is a little bit of lightning still. I mean, the lightning that we put on before has pretty much gone, but there's still hints there. There's an underlying kind of texture that's running along on this. And then we're going up to ice yellow, and it's really important that when you do this, the area that you're highlighting in the center gets smaller and smaller and smaller, but you want to make it go smaller quite quickly. You don't want it to, if you make this stage, for instance, if you make this stage too large an area, then it will desaturate the whole glow and you'll kind of lose the impact a little bit of it. Now you could go the complete other way, and you could kind of really push this and go quite bright in the whole thing, and then make the glow outside a little bit stronger. But I didn't want to do that because that then starts fighting with the blue of the monolith as well. So I was just trying to keep it at this. So that's some ivory in the center as well. I'm just going to zoom out just to show you as a whole. And you can see how small these marks are getting now. They're kind of the ivory right in the middle. And then the same with the glyph up at the top as well. So that is golden olive, ice yellow, and then ivory right towards the middle, and it will have the same sort of glow. But because you've got the glow in the reactor, then it helps sell the fact that the glyph has a glowing effect as well, which is quite cool. Still working in these little lines as well. All these lines are all going into the center. You can make some of them longer, you can make some of them smaller. You can kind of do them a little bit kind of crooked if you like lightning. And these little dots, actually, they're kind of like specular highlights. So it's where the edges will obviously catch a little bit more reflections than flat surfaces. So the edges should always be brighter than a flat surface. So that's where you can. So basically the flat surfaces will be reflecting the majority of the color, and then the edges will pop a little bit brighter color. So the edges around, the flat surfaces around will have like the ice yellow or the golden olive, and then any edges you can push into ice yellow / ivory. Now this is what I was talking about with the contrast. You need the contrast in there. So this is some golden olive with some black mixed in, and this is one of the things that you don't get when you're airbrushing, because you can't control the airbrush enough to kind of keep these in shadow. So we're just reinforcing right down in the recesses there with a little bit of golden olive and some black to push the contrast back up to the center. You really need that kind of, there we go, and he's now sitting behind the portal quite well. But you can just see how much almost impact that had straight away, adding that contrast into the shadows. And then going around and just dotting all the corners, all the edges. These small little marks make such a difference. There were quite a few comments on the Twitch channel, Twitch chat, as I was painting them, how much of a kind of an impact it has when you add these specular highlights. The specular highlights that hit the corners and the edges and everything like that. So these are the specular highlights. You can do them with, so start with ice yellow, and then if you think you need a little bit more punch, then you can add ivory onto the dots as well. And then this is some yellow green as well. It's again, I've got 2 lots of yellow green on the wet palette. It's not a very kind of opaque color anyway, so it's almost like a glaze paint itself. But it is thinned down. I've got 2 different kind of pools of it on the wet palette. One of them is kind of 1-to-1 water and paint, and one is about 2-to-1, 3-to-1 water to paint. So the glaze, the thinner one, you can glaze over the top of the ivory just to kind of soften it back if it's looking a little bit bright, or you just want to introduce a bit more colour back into where it is. So for instance there I was highlighting with some ivory, and then this is the yellow-green glaze again, just kind of softening into the ivory, softening over and adding some colour again to the reflections. That was a cool one. I'd not seen the Mortal Kombat one. I didn't notice that. That was that's one of the things that you don't notice when you're painting, all the little floating emojis that you get. One thing that I'd like to point out as well, pay attention here. So the light is obviously, it's coming down from the light that I've got on top, my painting lamp. But look where, when I hold it a little bit flatter, look where the reflections are. So if you look round the reactor housing, you've got the recesses from the panels. Look where those panels are kind of looking a little bit green already, so they're automatically already reflecting back a little bit of this kind of glowy green on the inside, and we're actually going to use those later on to really push where this glow is coming from. Yeah, it's interesting. It was one of the things that I noticed when I was painting it, and it kind of reinforced my decision to push the glow a little bit further out, and then also bouncing back onto the metallic as well. So we're just kind of black lining again. This is the golden olive with a little bit of black in it. It's quite thin down so that it will run into the recesses, and we're not going to if you get a heavy brush, then you're not going to do that much damage, sort of thing. But it is a small brush. So it's just going into the recesses and just reinforcing those. And this is where we're going to start getting the glow on the outside. Now you've got to pay attention here, because there's a big block in the center which is going to stop the light. Light can only travel in straight lines, so it's not going to bend around the housing block on the inside and hit this to kind of full intensity towards the center. So which is why I'll leave that little gap in the middle there. So this is golden olive again, but it's very thin down. You could, I considered doing this with the airbrush, but it's so tight and it would need so much masking, it's just not worth it when you can you've just got to work this and build this up very slowly with the brush. So these are glazes of golden olive, and we're leaving that gap in the center because that's where the shadow would be. You'd have a shadow cast there by that reactor housing that's kind of sticking out in the middle. And all the brush marks, again, look at all the brush marks are all going towards the edge. The edge is going to be the hottest, so that's going to be the brightest or the hottest point, and then the light is going to fade out the further away you go, the further up these panels you go. But you can see how much of an impact it's making already. And then, like we were talking about before, the edges will have an even higher light intensity than the panels itself, the flat panels. So make sure that you're pushing the edge intensity brightness. So I think this is still golden olive, and you can see how much. Like this is like 4, 5, 6 layers now, and we're just now starting to get a little bit of impact towards the front edge. Every single brush stroke is going towards that front edge, so that it's leaving. When you kind of lift off the paintbrush, it's leaving depositing a bit more paint there, but it's kind of softening it down everywhere else. And then we're just kind of still going over and reinforcing those edges, making sure the edges are brighter than the surface themselves. That looks like a little bit of a yellow green, but I think it's still golden olive. And then you can use exactly the same process, exactly the same kind of reasoning as we've been using on the inside of the reactor. So the edges are going to have bright edges, so the edges will be ice yellow or ivory on like a little specular highlight. And then this is just something that I noticed in the same way that I noticed that when the light was reflecting on the housing, on the panels, the blue panels on the outside, I also noticed that it was just catching the metallic bit there as well. So if you add a bit to that, it's not 100% like accurate to how it would be, because the light is emanating outwards, and those surfaces on the housing are facing away, but it kind of matches the direction that the glow is going from, and I just think it's almost like a rule of cool rather than a rule of accuracy, because it's not completely accurate. You'd get a little bit of bounce reflection going back on it maybe, but it just kind of carries that line of the highlight of the glow coming out of the reactor onto this onto the edges of the armor here on the monolith. So I just kind of added those in as well. So any surfaces that you can see, I tried to keep it to surfaces which are facing upwards, because you're not really going to notice the ones which are facing downwards when it's on the table. So I left those like the grill pads, if you like, the grill lines on the side of the armor panels. I left a lot of those, but I just did the ones which were facing upwards. Again, just reinforcing. It's loads and loads and loads of layers of pretty much the same colour, and then pushing the intensity towards the model, towards the corner. And when you're building up these layers, building up these kind of glazes, if you notice it getting a little bit like if you notice the colour in the corner is getting a little too flat, that's when you can then go in with the brighter colour and reinforce that centre. So if you notice that like this colour here is just pushing the very, very closest point. So just these little grills as well. So they were the grill panels which are facing upwards, the edges of the grill panels which are facing up. And then again, we're just kind of reinforcing again these the reflections on the metallic housing. Now these glazes are focused in the center. You can see I've done both sides now as well. They're focused in the center, so when you're glazing those, you want to do 2 brush strokes, one going towards the middle, and then you change the brush stroke to the opposite side and you bring it back to the same middle, and then that will deposit 2 lots of paint, but you'll have the soft glaze on either side of it then, in a similar way that I'm doing these little marks here as well. And that's just because there's an edge there, so there's a flat surface and then there's an edge in the middle, and the edge will catch a bit more light than the flat surface, so you just put a little bit more of a reflection on there. So it's just going over and over and over, because I'm building it up with thin glazes. You'll put a mark down and it will look quite harsh when you put the mark down, and then it will, as it dries, it will kind of soften a little bit. And once it's dry, you'll see whether you need kind of to push it a little bit more or not, and then just add some more if you do. And then this little bit down at the bottom, I don't really know what it is. I just thought it would look cool if it was the similar sort of glow. And you can actually see down at the bottom there, that's probably got a little bit too much ivory in it. I think I'll probably go back and glaze over some yellow green into that just to give it some colour back, because it's so desaturated. So you can see what happens if you put too much ivory on the highlights. That needs some yellow green put back into it. Now these kind of hotspots that we've been adding to the housing, they need to be hotter on the inside, so that's what we're doing there. We're just putting an edge, nice little edge highlight of some ivory on that inside. Just constantly reinforcing backwards and forwards. This is pretty much all ivory now, or ice yellow. Hello. So yeah, please, if you get a second, please drop me a like and a subscribe, and throw a comment down. This kind of the idea, you can do this glow with pretty much any colour. So if you wanted to do it with a blue colour, then obviously it's going to have a dark blue at the beginning, and then you can take, blue is actually a really nice colour to do glows with, because it retains its saturation as you go. Well, it doesn't retain its saturation, but it retains the kind of the colour hue a lot easier than if you're trying to do green. Green's very easy to go kind of too pale. Same with red. Red is very easy to go too pale, but blue works really well if you're going to do this, and take it up to like an almost a very, very pale blue cream colour. But blue glows work really well. You can apply this, just pick out, you probably want four colours, 4 paints. So get a dark blue, a couple of mid blues, or one mid blue, and then like a very, very pale blue, and then almost a white. You can get a white and mix it in with the blue, and that will kind of desaturate and pull it up. If you just get those 4 stages, and you can do that, you can do this kind of glow with anything. Yeah, it's just adding the little touches now. So there's the little specular highlights. I can't stress enough how much the specular highlights help. Just the little dots here and there, they really push the, not only the detail that you kind of see, that you don't get if you just airbrush it. So you can so if you go back to where we were airbrushing over the glazes, you could go back to the point where we were happy with the airbrushing, and then just add the specular highlights in, and that would help as well. But if you wanted to kind of keep going it this far, then that's where it ends up looking. This is very much an in context idea, so I was trying to keep it, I didn't want to go too bright, I didn't want to kind of have the whole thing glowing on the inside. I needed to have some contrast to it, so you can see that's where we get the black around it as well. And then the monolith, the armor panels are going to be the kind of the broken hotspot blue that I've been doing on the rest of the monolith, if you've been hanging out and watching any of my YouTube Twitch streams. But yeah, there we go. That's how I did the Reactor glows on my monolith. So thank you very much for hanging out and watching this one. I hope you learned something. Please drop down below if you've got any questions. I'd love to hear your comments down below. Drop me a follow and a subscribe. That would be amazing. I'm on my way to 1 million subscribers on YouTube. There's a lifelong goal. It's not really, but yeah, it'd be great if you could drop me a follow. And if you can find me on Instagram as well. I'm closing into 10,000 followers on Instagram, so if you can drop me a follow on there, it'd be amazing. It's at Chris Frossin. And then exactly the same on Twitch and Twitter and things like that. So I'm very, very easy to find. So thank you very much. There are going to be some more Necron videos coming soon. I'm working on a Catacomb command barge. I'm doing lots and lots of heavy destroyers. And hopefully the Necrons will have some new models coming out with their codex. And once they do, we'll be painting those up for my army as well. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care. Have a lovely weekend. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks very much.